5 o'clock, we're gonna get going, everybody.
Okay.
Make that 9.
Oh, 9, we got Dave here.
here.
Yes.
No wonder we couldn't.
We'll get one more.
Mr. Arcuri? Here. Mr. Bova?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Core?
Yeah.
Mr. Coyne?
Here.
Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
All present.
Mr. Lewis? He's not. Mr. Karam? That's who it was. Mr. Mitolo? Mr. Sampson?
Here.
Ms. Sesney? She's here. We have 9.
Thanks, sir. You have in your packet the draft minutes from our August 17, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Let's see.
Second. Thanks, Denny. Any deletions, corrections, additions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I missed who made the motions.
Anybody opposed?
Because I wasn't at that meeting.
Who just said that? Joe?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I
Okay.
abstained.
Abstaining.
Okay, very good.
All right, still passes.
Are we done with that?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. First item on our agenda will be the resolution decision regarding establishment of water rates, fees, and charges effective January 1, 2021. Oh my God, 2021.
Scary, isn't it?
It's good that we're gonna be done with it. 2020.
Not soon enough.
Gee, that's bad.
Okay, so a couple things I'll point out. First and foremost, we did get the certification letter from the rate consultant. That is necessary, as most of you know. We are required to hire an outside rate consultant that looks at the proposed budget and the proposed rates, runs a number of financial tests, makes sure that we meet some of our bond covenants for debt service coverage ratios and other things. We've gone back and forth with them. Fortunately, they were involved early on because we were also preparing the bond issue. And so the rate consultant had a lot of the numbers before we even got into the actual budget discussion. But we do have their letter certifying it, saying that we meet all the covenant tests and that the rate structure as currently proposed works to support the proposed budget. So that's one thing that's necessary before you vote, and that is in place. The other thing I wanted to point out is that, I'm sorry, is that my echo or is someone saying something?
I think someone was mentioning something.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the rate structure includes one new component. That is the fact that we talked about the possibility of creating a monthly residential rate schedule. And although we won't be ready to implement it in January because we're still doing some testing with the new software for the Neptune meter reading system, we wanted to have the rate schedule in place and approved by the board so that we can implement it at some point during 2021. Hopefully by February or March, if not a little bit later. But all it is essentially the regular quarterly schedule divided into 3. Jim Corfanta and his accounting staff have worked through it. We have to take a second look maybe at the rate structure within the lower tiers just to make sure that it actually works out equitably. But it seems to be a workable framework at the moment where it's just a third of the quarterly bill. So a customer that switches from quarterly to monthly will essentially be paying the same amount over the same 3-month period, whether they're billed all at once or they're billed 3 times individually by the month. So that is in the rates and fees as scheduled as well. So as we talked about at the last meeting, we have moved the debt payment for 2021 that would have been associated with the bond series that's going to be closing next week, and built that actually into the bonds so that the first year's payment will not be included in this rate structure. And by doing so, we brought it down to 2%, which seems to be something that everybody agreed was going to be workable at this point in time. So that's where we sit today. If there's any questions on that, we'd be happy to take them, obviously.
Any questions for Pat regarding this. We did spend quite a bit of time at the workshop. Everybody had an opportunity between then and now to also chime in with anything further you may have had. Within our packet, there is a proposed resolution, if someone would care to make that.
I'll move it.
A second?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Betty?
Second.
Okay,
Has joined the meeting.
yes. Who just joined the meeting? Hello?
Richard,
Richard, okay.
Richard,
Thanks,
Hi,
Rich.
Richard, thanks for joining.
you are.
Any further comments or discussion regarding this resolution? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Okay.
The next item on our agenda is a resolution, the approval of the MVWA 2021. You're killing me with this 2021 calendar year proposed budget. Pat?
Okay, so as we discussed, we made some changes to the budget at the behest of the board over the last two meetings. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we did move an interest payment out. That brought us down close to 2%. To get to 2%, what Jim did was introduce a little bit more from reserves. That's that line that's labeled as a cash carry forward from prior years. As you know, we've ended each year with a little bit of a cash surplus, and over the years that does accumulate. And so, as I mentioned both in the media release and on the radio, and we've discussed here at the meetings, this is a mechanism through which we're taking some of that cash that has been accumulated surplus and using it to balance the remainder of the budget. And it's in a sense a way of giving back some of the cash that we've received back to the customers in the form of rate relief to plug any potential hole in this budget. Should we spend this full budget out, we would be drawing down that money from reserves. It was already over $1 million to be introduced into the budget. Jim increased it just a little bit to get us to 2.0% from we would have been about 2.2. So other than that, the budget is the same as what we've discussed earlier with no other changes. And it would take effect beginning January 1.
Any questions for Pat regarding this?
Alice,
Yes?
it's not a question for Pat, it's just a request. I talked a little bit with Jim about this today, and I'd like to, I think we might need to take a look at the cost of charge card service charges around mid-year. If we go to monthly billing and we get any number of people who do that and use their charge card or bank accounts, we might have a situation mid-year which could be getting expensive. So I'm only asking that the staff start a report that they can monitor and share with the board, and maybe sometime around August, July or August, we start to have a conversation related to those charges and how much the board absorbs for the future.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me, Bruce.
I just want to get it on the agenda before we get into other types of budget discussions.
I think that's a good idea as well.
You want to start talking about the 2022 budget?
Yeah, that's true.
You're killing me, you're killing me. In your packet, there is the actual proposed resolution, if someone cares to, did we do this already? Cares to
No,
move it?
no, we did not.
Someone move it, please, if you're so inclined.
I'll move it. Yeah.
A second?
Second by Betty?
Yep,
Did we get a second?
yes, we
Betty.
did.
I will second it.
Oh, thanks, Betty. Any further comments, concerns regarding this?
Yes, I do, Ellis. And the budget, I know you got it down to 2%, which is, fine for most of us. But we have a large number of people that 2% is going to really, could be better. One of the things I think we better look at for next year is to cut back on outside hiring as far as to get projects done or engineering or whatever. We have our own guys that are more than capable, and it'd be a lot cheaper than hiring contractors to make big hookups for us. We always did it in the past ourselves. I did many of them, so I know it was bad to put on a whole nother crew with the big track hole and everything else. I know we can do it ourselves without hiring outside people. It costs us a lot more money. So I think I'm really wrestling with this, even at 2%.
Well, we can certainly take a look at that, Denny.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Yep, one.
Okay.
Thank you. You have in your packet the third quarter investment statement ending 9/30/2016.
Yes, as I mentioned in the past, public authorities laws require that we provide you a quarterly investment statement showing our different investments that we have primarily at the Bank of New York. And the statement shows the revenues earned and any expenses that are associated with those investments. So again, you have the third quarter ending September 30th, 2020. Any questions?
If there aren't any questions, is there a motion to approve the statement?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Frank.
Second.
Yeah.
Dave?
You got them?
Yes.
Any questions or further comments regarding this? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Finance, Jim, I see we have both August and September's financial reports in our packet.
Just a couple quick comments. Yes, we are still down approximately 3.5% in consumption for the year. However, at the end of September, we are doing fairly well with cash collection. So we actually had a decent month.
Get a little feedback.
We're getting some feedback. I'm sorry.
You know what, if everybody could mute themselves and then unmute if you have a question, that would help.
A couple other comments. Revenues are on track year to date. Receivables are up a little. We're about approximately $400,000 up for the year. But we're hoping as time goes on here and we recover out of this pandemic, things will get a little better. But we're in a good position going forward into the last quarter of the year.
Any questions for Jim regarding either one of these statements?
I have one question, just briefly in
On the
regards to the outstanding balances. Is there anything that we can do to get, some of these are well-known entities, and I can't understand why they are, 6 months behind with their water bill.
Right. We can certainly look into those, and I can talk to you about some in particular afterwards. I'm sure we
There's
can
4 or 5
review.
that I see here that I clearly should be.
Yeah.
We've also been barred by the state of New York from turning off water to people. And we're also currently not applying late fees as a COVID accommodation. So it could be that some of these people are actually genuinely struggling, or they're maybe taking a little bit of advantage of it, but we'll do some outreach and
I think more of the latter.
even some phone calls. That
Yeah.
could very well be.
Yeah.
But we'll reach out to them and find out what they're doing individually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
What's
all
going
I,
on with this, with Harbor Minerals?
I'm sorry?
Harbor Minerals is the big one. Are they still in business?
Harbor Minerals?
Harbor Point Minerals.
Oh, Harbor Point. I'm not sure, Bruce. Maybe,
Oh, it shows 14,000 down there.
yeah,
Harbor-
14,000.
Yeah, we can look into that,
are you aware of anything, Ann?
and,
I'm not aware of anything on that.
Well, we don't know if they're in business, but we'll find out.
it is still a current account.
It's an active account, but we'll find out what they're doing there.
Vince, you had a question?
Yeah, on page one, Jim, you refer to the pension liability increased $2.5 million over the past year. Isn't that a standard computation, and why would the GASB 68 cause it to go up $2.5 million?
That is calculated by the state of New York through their actuary, and we get a statement each year. And so it's just, it's a matter of those that are retiring, have retired, and a calculation that they do. And so, yeah, it has fluctuated up and down over the last several years. So unfortunately.
I know, but I'm just curious about why $2.5 million difference in 1 year.
Right. Yeah, it is becoming a large liability to us, and it's what we would have to pay over the life of a employee.
I think I'm
Well, I
not,
understand what it's all about. I'm just wondering why it changed so dramatically.
well, I'm not certain, but I think
And,
Could I jump in there for a minute?
there's a lot of echo.
It's Rocco.
Yeah, go ahead,
I think, you know, a lot of companies, especially in these, and I'm not sure if the water authority is the same way, but a lot of these defined plans, companies were looking to exit and pay them out almost about a year ago. I could just tell you, we were going to buy ours out. And when we had called in for the price at that time, this is going back in August of last year, 2019, our number to buy it out was almost like about $1.2 million. But as interest rates dropped, when interest rates drop, it increases the balance that has to be paid in. So interest rates are so low right now, we ended up stopping paying it out because it went from $1.2 million, I'm going to say like within 3 to 4 months, up to almost $3 million. So my guess is what happened there, Vince, the reason you see the larger amount is interest rates dropping. It means that we would have to pay more in to cover the liability to the employee. Is that a fair statement?
I think,
That
Rocco,
makes sense,
I
but-
think that's probably most of it, because the value of the portfolio of the state fund changes with the market, and when it dipped, they
Right.
took a hit. This echo is confusing. I think the other piece of it too is that when we have employee turnover and we hire younger employees, as soon as they go into the system and their birth date is recorded, the system projects out how many years they could be working for us till retirement age, and then what that liability would be. So, you know, if we hire someone that's 50 years old versus someone who's 25, the total liability by the time they retire is going to be lower if they come on board at a higher age. We have had some recent hirees of younger people, so I think that may add to some of that liability as well. But it's mostly the fund
The other
balance.
part of this was in 2020, the New York State Common Retirement Fund portfolio has continued to earn less than realized in this last year, 2.658%. It's significantly down, and the state they're going to have continued big increases for the next couple of years.
Right. And a lot of it, as you said, has to do with interest rates and the drop in the market. So,
Right.
you know, it's really no way around it other than, now as rates start to move, you know, and they move upward, then I think you're going to see that liability drop.
And just to make a
Yeah, it's a
note,
lagging indicator for New York, though.
right, when they do their calculation as of March 31st of each year. So depending on what the market was doing, I want to say it was down then.
Right, right.
So I think somebody's volume is still too high on their computer. It's
No,
going back
No, it
into,
needs to be muted.
or it needs, well, either muted or the volume's too high, it's going back in through the speaker. So if you turn the volume on your computer down a little bit, it'll get rid of that echo, which it has already. I can hear
Vince,
myself.
did you get the answer to your question on this?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. Yeah, thanks, Rock.
Anything else? Thanks, Jim. There's something from operations. I see that it's on the agenda.
No. I'm not sure why it's on.
No?
Not that I know of, no.
Perfect.
Did we approve the financial report?
Onto your report.
We don't approve them.
We don't approve them.
No, we just talk
Okay,
about
I'm
them.
sorry. Ellis, I'm sorry, what was that?
Your report.
Oh, thank you. There was a little chatter here, I'm
Dick,
sorry.
you don't have anything?
Okay, so on some good news, as you may have seen, I sent a press release out to everybody that came from Moody's Investor Service. Last Thursday, the 22nd, they notified us that they were going to upgrade our bond rating from an A1 to a AA3. And that was a result of the presentation that we made during the prior week to get the bonds rated. We kicked off the bonding process way back in early June. And the tail end of that is that once it's all put together, we speak to Moody's. We also spoke with Standard & Poor's to get the bonds rated. And Moody's received our presentation very well. We were filled with optimism and talked about growth in the system, et cetera. And they did upgrade us. Standard & Poor's, unfortunately, kept us where we were, but we did get a small win. At the end of the phone call, when our financial consultant, Rick McCarthy, kind of pressed him a little bit for a bond rating upgrade, the analyst who was handling it said that they had placed a negative outlook across the entire water and sewer sectors. For some reason, I don't really know why, they didn't really explain, but they kept us at an A+, and they gave us a stable outlook. So at least they singled us out from the umbrella that they had cast on the entire sector. So they left us where we were, which is fine, with a stable outlook. But we did get the bond rating increase. Tomorrow, I'll be putting out a media release. I have it drafted now. Just didn't want to put it out today with the vote on the rate and the budget going on at the same time. So that'll be forwarded to all of you tomorrow morning before it goes out, and also to the Finance Authority about the rate increase. The bonds are scheduled to close a week from this Thursday, November 5th, but they've already been priced and sold as of last Thursday by the new underwriters we hired, the Raymond James Corporation. It used to be Jeffries, which was formerly First Albany Corp. Raymond James did a great job as underwriters. They moved the whole bond issue to the market last Thursday and priced it out. Before I get into the interest rates, I'll just give a quick overview. If you're not familiar with this, we sell what are called serial bonds. So we're selling the 2020 bond series. It's called a series because it's filled with staggered maturity dates, starting a year from now all the way out 26 years to 2046. And by having sets amounts of money retiring each year, that allows us to have what we call level debt. Otherwise, if we just borrowed money for 26 years straight and it all came due right at the end, we'd have one massive payment right at the end of the bond series, which doesn't do anybody any good. It's also better for investors. Some people are looking for short-term investments, some for longer term. Those that want to tie their money up longer and go out on a longer-term bond, because in theory they take a longer risk, the longer they go out, they're rewarded with a little bit higher interest rate. So the way that it panned out was that the interest rates for all the staggered maturity dates on this issue ranged from 0.52%, a 0.5% essentially, for the 2021 maturity date, which is that first payment that we built into the bonds to make that payment, and then up to 2.37% in 2033 on the taxable bonds, which I'll get into in a minute, and then as high as 2.41% for the final redemption in 2046. The reason I mentioned taxable bonds is because, as you may recall, we're not only asking for, quote, new money, the $15.2 million, which will be tax-exempt revenue bonds, but we were also refunding some of our 2012 bonds. And because those haven't hit the call date yet, they are being refunded with taxable bonds rather than tax-exempt bonds. Taxable bonds generally carry a slightly higher interest rate because people have to pay taxes on the earnings, so they need a higher yield to cover that. So when you add all that together, the average interest rate across all the maturity dates was 2.19%, which is quite low. We may not see these rates ever again. Who knows? The Fed did say that they're going to keep the rates low for another 2 or 3 years, perhaps. So maybe the next time we go out, it won't be a whole lot higher than this. But the refunding bonds, the 2012 bonds that are being refunded, in actual dollars, we're going to save $571,000 over the remaining life of those bonds. The net present value of that savings in today's dollars is worth $457,000. So we're saving about $500,000 by doing this refunding. It made perfect sense. We're pretty pleased with the way it worked out. I'll also mention that about $13.9 million of the bonds were purchased by 4 different investment pools, which they bought into because we had designated them as green bonds. And these 4 investment pools indicated to our underwriters that they had use for green bonds in their portfolio. They were seeking green bonds, and that drew them to us. Now, maybe they would have bought our bonds either way, but they did say to the underwriters that these bonds were attractive to them on the green basis because they're being used for environmental improvements. The last thing I'll mention is that even though we did get the upgrade from Moody's, we did get bond insurance. So they were sold as insured AAA rated bonds, which drove the rates down a little bit lower than they otherwise would have. So with the bond insurance, we're producing a net savings of another $220,000 below what they would have been without the insurance. And that will lower the annual debt service by about $8,500 a year moving forward, thanks to the insurance. So it all worked out well. The bonds should close, as I said, on Thursday the 5th, and that'll be the day that the money will be deposited to our construction fund. There'll be a debt service reserve account set up at that time and a debt service sinking fund set up, and then we'll begin funding it as we move forward. So if there are no questions on any of the bonding, there's a few other things I'll just go through quickly.
Good job.
Okay. Hearing none, I will just, as a matter of information, unfortunately, we did have one active COVID case involving one of our water maintenance workers who works in the field on one of the crews. So we did the tracing and isolating anyone that was a direct contact. We did have a number of employees that we kept out for the required period of time, but we're very pleased to say, number one, the affected employee is steadily recovering. It seems that he's over the worst of it, but is still out sick. The people that we kept out on the quarantine period are all back to work, and none of them have developed any symptoms. So it looks like this case was kept isolated and did not spread. So we're pleased about that. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, the way we're splitting the crews up and still keeping them going in remote locations. So could have been worse. We dodged a little bit of a bullet, and thankfully our employee is going to be okay. Another item I'll mention is that we have our Teamster employment contract, the union contract, is expiring on December 31st of this year. The other contract for the Management Employees Association, which is the self-represented group of managers, middle managers, and technical people, actually has already expired as of April 1st. So last Tuesday, our HR director and I, Greg Santry, and I sat down with our labor attorney from Hancock Estabrook, John Corcoran, who came down and meet with us. And we're looking at weighing some options to move forward. We will keep the board included before we get too far down this road. One possibility that we're looking at is a 1-year rollover and then negotiate brand new contracts later when we're through the COVID crisis. But we will, as I said, confer with the board before obviously anything is committed to be sure that the board is going to be satisfied with whatever we may end up with. But we have kicked that process off, so be on the lookout for more information. One more item of note, Hinckley Reservoir's elevation today is at 1203 elevation above sea level, which for us is workable, but it's about 10 years below, 10 feet below the average for this state, going back over the 24-year average period that's on their website. The average elevation is 1213, we're at 1203. The good news is with the rain we had last week, we actually picked up 2 feet. So instead of it going down between 4 and 6 inches a week, the way it's been doing all summer, we went back up 2 feet. And there is more rain scheduled for this week. The reservoir curve is already bending upward, so it looks like we're picking up a little more elevation. I don't know exactly how much it'll go up for the rest of the week. I don't know, Dick, have you seen the forecast for that?
It looks like about another 3 or 4 feet.
Another 3 or 4 feet, Dick says, according to the forecast on the canal site. So we should be approaching with the fall rains, getting back to somewhere into normal territory pretty soon. And I do want to point out that the Canal Corp voluntarily cut back what they were letting out of the dam way back in May. So although we've had some compliance problems in the past with the agreement, this year they were fully cooperative and reduced the outflow all the way down to the minimum starting in mid-May, and which essentially shows what we said for years, which is minor adjustments early on can avoid catastrophic need for adjustments towards the end. So that worked out very well, and I'm glad that they were cooperative with us. So the last thing I'll mention, Betty's here, so she can maybe fill in the ending of this story. I had the pleasure, or somewhat pleasure, maybe displeasure, of attending a town hall meeting at Schuyler Town Hall last week. They were having a meeting on the proposed West Schuyler Water District, and obviously the people who are opposed to it generally speak louder than the people that are in favor of it. It did get a little raucous, and I actually answered a few questions for them along the way while I was there. Their engineer, the town engineer, handled most of it. But I left before the vote, so I don't know what happened, Betty, and maybe you can, or was there a vote?
Yes, there was a vote. We went with the permissive referendum.
Oh, right, okay.
Yep, it's my understanding that people are out already getting signatures. I think that they're a minority, though, of the people that, all the people in this proposed district. And if it does go to vote, I'm very optimistic that the people who are for water in this area, of whom there are many, because the wells, the very bad wells, some very dry wells, people that have no water, they have to go to the laundromat, they can't wash their car in their driveway, and one guy's well actually blew up when a match was lit by the well, methane gas.
Yikes.
And there's all sorts of issues, bacteria-ridden wells and terrible water, quality water. So I'm quite hopeful. There was a round of applause in the back when one of the people in favor spoke of it, and I think that they outweighed. My own personal opinion is that they outweighed the negatives. So I'm looking forward to this happening. It's long overdue. Since 2004, the project was brought up initially, and it was ready to go, all ready to go. And then, of course, Canal stepped in, and it was halted for so many years. But we're finally at the point, hopefully, where it's gonna happen.
Great, thanks for the update. And so for those of you who may not understand how permissive referendum works, I had forgotten, Betty, and I thought I forgot for a minute that it wasn't going to a full public referendum, but permissive referendum means that the town board voted to create the district, and now those who are opposed to it have to gather at least 10% of the people in the district to sign a petition saying they want it to go to a public vote. And they have, I believe, 30 days to do that, so that would put it somewhere around Thanksgiving time. If they can get at least 10% of the people that are supposed to be in the district to sign the petition, it will force it to go to a full referendum public vote. So we'll cross our fingers. The other thing about that too is that those of you who were on the board way back then, which is probably maybe 3 or 4 of you, may recall that it was in 2003 that this board voted to make a contribution to that district to do a little bit of upsizing of their water tank, so that there'd be additional storage created that would be useful for other areas of the system. So that was passed in 2003. That resolution is still on the books. So unless it gets rescinded, if this district is created, we will be on the hook to contribute $50,000 towards that district. So I just thought I'd point that out in case anybody hears about it and gets surprised. That's something that goes back 17 years. But the money's still sitting there, and it's earned $100,000 in interest since then, so.
Yes, we got some great grants too, so
Yeah.
that's up an awful lot.
So that's all I have, unless there's any questions from anybody, I'd be happy to take them.
Well, I have one question, Pat. How's the tree project progressing?
The Cree project is going very well. I was told that later this week there might be a ceremony for them to be putting the last iron girder in place. I don't know if that's still on schedule or not. Rocco would probably know that better than me at this point. But they are proceeding with the building construction. They are on schedule. I believe they are even a little bit ahead of schedule, but so far so good. And they're still planning to be tooling the building over next summer and ramping up for production going into next fall. Anything else?
Any other questions for Pat? Any old business? Any new business? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.